Hello, welcome back to my channel. Somehow we made it this far. So if you're coming off of watching my part 1 of this vlog, you know that I had to end the vlog because, well, partially end the vlog because the election rolled around and it was just not looking great. I can't imagine why. But yeah, my health was all over the place. I was dealing with just so much anguish, and I think I went through all 5 stages of grief during the 3 weeks it's been since the election. Fortunately, I have pretty much stopped Twitter completely. Unfortunately, I started reading the news more, so now I know way too much about things going on. But as important as it is to know about the goings on in politics and in the world, humans were just not meant to process all this information. So I'm back trying to throw myself back into reading, taking on some new hobbies, trying to get back into things that I've always wanted to do, such as watercolor, drawing, trying to write more. God damn it. I don't really think I talk about my writing as much on this channel as I think I do, but I'm trying to write a book. It's fantasy. One of them is fantasy. I just have too many ideas, and ADHD brain, I just tend to bounce around all these ideas. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, I'm trying to write a book, trying to get something off the ground. But you came here for my readings vlog, so let's just get right back into it. It's been a crazy few weeks. I finished the Lesbian Vampires book, Contract Bound by Elle May. So jumping right back into this, the synopsis is that there is this vampire hunter named Sylvia, and she hates vampires because they killed her family, and there was this, I forgot the clan name, but there was this clan symbol painted on her family home walls with her family's blood. So she's like, I hate all vampires and I hate this clan specifically. But the way that her vampire hunter organization works is that they saddle their hunters with boatloads of debt. And so to pay off the debt, she has to take on jobs until finally one huge job falls onto her lap to guard the clan heir, Kier. And she is an incredibly wily and manipulative vampire who has gone through all the previous hunters, slept with them or forced them to do her bidding, and eventually got them to leave because she doesn't think it's all set up by her evil father, evil father. And so she's like, I don't want to be babysat. I'm going to be the clan leader in a few months. I don't need my father to babysit me because they have a terrible relationship, incredibly abusive. This transfer of power from her father to Kier is only out of by law, or I think in this world vampires do have some sort of old age limit that just catches up to them. And she's like, he doesn't want to transfer power because he wants to, it's just because he has to, and he's trying to babysit me and control me with these hunters. But Sylvia, despite the fact that this particular clan symbol was painted on her family walls at the night of their murder, and that she hates vampires, she's like, I have to clean out this debt. You know what really brings people together? Paying off debt and trying to work the capitalist society. Anyway, I'm gonna get real steamy. Anyway, it is steamy. I don't know. I'm gonna get really bothered. God damn it! I can't do this anymore. Also, this book is heavy. I'll stop. I'll stop holding it. My arms hurt. So they're forced in this proximity together. Sylvia has to guard Kier, or accompany Kier, during these vampire clan events and social gatherings and whatnot. But Kier is like, actually, this girl, she's not falling so easily for me. I think this is gonna be fun. So Kier and Sylvia strike up this relationship where, despite Sylvia hating vampires, she is eventually weathered down by Kier and her hot vampire sexiness. And Kier in turn opens up a little bit more emotionally, showing the places where she goes to be alone. Sylvia stands up for Kier when Kier's father abuses them. And overall, I enjoyed it. I think when it comes to books I guess you can say this is a paranormal romantasy, I guess. Romantasy is such a huge genre at this point, I don't really know what falls under it. But because this is a steamier, spicier, sexier lesbian vampires book, a lot of page time, of course, is given to these, given to the sex scenes, and those I enjoyed. They tended to get a little samey after a while because they just used hands and mouths for the most part, and I know that is what lesbians do, but then it's like, okay, what, like, I feel like the only differences that came about was like where they did it. And then I'm like, okay, this is what she's gonna do. A little bit more creativity with the scene, those scenes would have been good. I was more interested in the world building and the plot than I thought I was gonna be, because I was very intrigued by this system of vampire hunter organization that is operating on saddling their members with debt. In other like organizations like Vampire Hunters or I don't know, Shadow Hunters, because I actually rewatched the Mortal Instruments movie a while back. It is an interesting idea because commonly like monster hunter organizations are like guilds or people banded together by a noble cause, a religious cause, even a divine cause. But no, this one is like, yeah, you can hunt vampires, but we're gonna saddle you with so much debt because yeah, we helped you, so you should be paying us. And it's very much like a Black Company mindset. I know that there are more books later in the series, and this book does end in a huge cliffhanger that I won't spoil. I don't know if like those concepts will be explored later. I'm not really keen on reading the second book. Maybe I will, because this is an indie published book that got this like really pretty physical edition, and they don't have that obviously for the second book. I don't know where to put this. They don't have that for the second book, so I don't know if I'm gonna just if I get the itching for it, I'll just buy it in the Kindle store. But yeah, no, I think the thing is that it's not just with indie published, it's also with traditionally published books, that there are just some stories that introduce really interesting concepts and ideas, but don't really give the time to explore because its priorities are in other places. In such, this one was lesbian vampires, which I can respect because that's if that's what you want to write, go for it. And I guess in this one as well, I couldn't help but feel like maybe obviously the world building is the second priority, but was the world building created in response to trying to get these two characters to be together, be with each other, be forced to be with each other? You know what I mean? Where it's like the writer built these two walls like this so that the characters can go like this. I don't know. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you know, the world isn't the world. The world is the author's hands trying to push these two characters together. Like, so that's why it's like, oh, Sylvia has to stay in the order because she is in debt. Not necessarily out of a noble purpose, because if she did have this noble purpose to hunt vampires, then that would be a little bit harder, I think, to wear down, to be with this vampire lady, versus I'm in debt. Therefore, she has a reason to not be as aligned with the vampire hunters as she could be. I don't know. These are just like thoughts and ideas. And I guess, but of course, the relationship itself, I get what they were going for, but I feel like I only understood, I think, what the author was going for because I was reading into it, not necessarily what was on the page. So I don't know if that's good or if that just means maybe the author has to work a little harder to try and lay it all out. Or at least like make it subtle but accessible. I don't know, because ultimately it is not quite an enemies to lovers in my opinion, but I think maybe it's going for the vibes, like the play of enemies to lovers, and it hits like the beats where the characters open up to each other and defend each other. But then I guess when it came to like what they were doing in the sex scenes, I was like, okay, I know that sex scenes can just be there for fun. I think at some point with this book, however, when it was trying to drive their relationship development forward, I was a little bit like, but is this earned? Like, what is the trigger for this? Like, there were, sure, like emotional triggers throughout the book, kind of, but then it was like, okay, like, I don't know. It didn't really feel like it was a genuine reaction from the other character when they had this development. It just felt a little bit forced. That's just my opinion. Ultimately, I enjoyed it, so I liked it. I don't know. I guess nowadays I just feel like a 3 is kind of mean, but maybe now that I'm talking about it and now that my thoughts have settled, I'm like, maybe it is a 3. But anyway, those are the lesbian vampires. I gotta move on. because I'm so close to the end of this giant pile that I started, and the next book is Black Wings Beating by Alex London. As I said in the previous vlog, I've had this book for years. There's this inside joke in the inner cover that I don't remember why we had. It's a bit of a long book, but I think it should be easy because the type is quite big, and this is a YA fantasy. I have been thinking, and you know, I think the little free libraries are onto something here. I'm really hoping to get into more epic fantasy later, maybe next year. Those are huge tomes, so we'll see how that goes. But literally the other week, I got The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson in the little free library. It was like, it's this huge, I'll just show it to you. It's this huge mass market paperback edition. It's this huge one. And then I took this out. I'm like, finally I can read Brandon Sanderson, or another Brandon Sanderson. And then the next day I got the huge regular size version of the next book. I forgot what it's called. Whatever the next, is it Words of Radiance? I don't remember. But it was the second book in the Stormlight Archives. And I'm like, I think this little free library is trying to tell me something. I would like to get more into fantasy just to kind of escape, but also like use it for my own craft. So yeah, Black Wings Beating is a young adult fantasy based around birds who went to board school. No, I'm gonna stop. It's about these two twins and their very different outlooks on life. I think the brother, it's fraternal twins. I think the brother is queer, and it's very much, I recall, inspired by hawking. And like various traditions of hawking and hawk taming and hawk training. So that's super cool because these are predator birds, and they're just, the thing about predator birds that I've learned about, because I'm so well traveled and so well read, is that predator birds are not like dogs. You can't just let them out and they'll come back to you. Like, they are like highly trained, and you have to recognize that like this is a beast who will like nip your fingers off if you do something wrong. Similarly to like, you know, chimpanzees and like other wild animals, is that they're still honed in on their instincts. So not quite like dogs. I'll get started on that and do whatever I have to do next. I think I'm so behind on laundry, but we'll see you in the next update. All right, bye. Oh, I hope this lighting is good, but I don't want to think too hard about it. Alright, hello, I'm back with another reading vlog update. It's been, God, I don't even remember what the last book was. It's been a really rough couple of days. Thanksgiving was a lot of fun though, I will say that. I'm really dating myself right now. Not dating myself as in talking about how old I am, I'm just dating myself as in how long this vlog is taking me. I'm not very good at vlogs, or reading apparently. No, you know what, I need to think positively of myself. This is what I told myself I'd do once getting into the new year. Think positively. At least I'm doing this vlog. And also I did put out a video about Gladiator in the, please check out my video on Gladiator that I made super spontaneously in between the making of this vlog. I finished Black Wings Beating a while ago. I enjoyed it, and I also understand why it has a 3.5 star rating on Goodreads, or like 3.6. As I said earlier in I think in my previous vlog, Black Wings Beating follows these two siblings named Bryson and Kylie, and they live in this world in which this whole culture of birds and falconry is like the epicenter of this world. However, there are these various cultures and countries who have different attitudes towards birds, and they're all coming to a head, like clashing with each other. I think it's Kylie and Bryson are Ustari, but their mother is Altari, and she and her and their culture has a different attitude towards birds, as well as the Kartami, which I think is a faction of the Altari. The Kartami is like this evil cult-like faction of Altari who believe that like birds carry sin and they all need to be eradicated, and that's why they hate falconry. So that's like the background of this story, but like Kylie doesn't want to deal with any of that. She just doesn't want to deal with this bullshit. But Bryson is infatuated with a guy named Damien. And when Damien gets himself into a lot of trouble, Bryson takes over his debt and says to the local money lending lord that he's like, I'm gonna pay off his debt and I'm gonna get you a ghost eagle, which is this highly prized man-eating, mind-warping giant eagle that lives in the mountains, and only very few trappers have caught it. They're all legends. There's no surviving like instructions on how to catch a ghost eagle. So Kylie, who has this mysterious power to speak the language of the birds, even though she doesn't want to do anything about that, she's like, Bryson, you're an idiot. I'm coming with you. And that is basically the premise of the start of Blackwing's Beating. Now, I enjoyed it a lot, and I basically flew right through this book. I got distracted by a couple other things. That's why I didn't finish it as fast as I thought I would. I personally would give it a 4-star, only if the thing about this book, and I understand why it's maybe a 3.5 even in my book, is that this is really like the build-up prequel book. This is really like part 1 of book 1, if you catch my drift. So this is a trilogy, but I think maybe if this were somehow a duology or just structured a little differently in terms of its plot, I think book 1 could have been rated a lot higher, because this is like I said, it's like a part 1 of part 2. It's very much like the build up. Like the ghost eagle is really just like one step of the larger world that these siblings need to take now. I guess like the way that we learn things about this world, and then compared to what the ghost eagle, their quest for the ghost eagle is, it's like small and paltry by comparison. Once we learn about the Kartami, once we learn about the lords and the Kyrgs, I think they're called, and once we learn about everything that they're dealing with in the greater world, the politics, the money grabbing, it just seems like, oh yeah, the ghost eagle, psst, it's like small potatoes. So that's why I'm a little bit like, yeah, I wish it wasn't a 3.5 star, but it kind of does feel like it at the end, because the ending, like if they got the ghost eagle first and then through that learned about the wider world, that's the setup for book 2, because how it goes is that they learn about the wider world as they're climbing up the mountain. And also, surprisingly, the mountain climbing doesn't really feel like a huge part at all, which perhaps like maybe like it could have been like a much more exciting adventure in and of itself. I hope you like my hat. I didn't mention my hat. It's really cold here, guys. So yeah, look, I do highly recommend it. And now that the whole trilogy has been out for a while, I think you can just fly by it real fast. I don't know if I'm gonna keep this copy though. And like, what are we gonna do about Zane? I don't know. I really don't. It's one of those things. Again, like my living situation is complicated, because ultimately the goal of this vlog is to see if I can downsize. So I think I really need to like swing the axe down, but it's not because I didn't like it. So I'm probably gonna at some point take the second book and third book out of the library if I'm feeling a craving for birds or whatever. But yeah, no, I highly recommend this book if you're really also itching for a YA fantasy book about falconry. Like, this is honestly it. There's really nothing else like it. But no, yeah, this world building is honestly pretty solid so far from the first book. So again, if this interests you, then give it a go, honestly. So the next book in my reading vlog was supposed to be Monstress by Marjorie Liu, and I thought I had a copy. I thought I had volume 1 and 2. For some reason, I only have volume 2 and 3, and I could not find where volume 1 is anywhere, and I think I must have given it to somebody and don't remember who it was. So out of fairness, I got volume 1 from the library. Since I have volume 2 and 3, like I have to know where I'm going. I don't know. I mean, really, like, you know, I told myself this for this coming year, I'm going to use the library more often, and I've been using it way more often for manga, because honestly, if I want to buy every manga that I like, I'm not gonna have any shelf space. So I have to be very discerning with my shelf space. It's getting really hard. It is seriously getting really hard. But I finally picked up my requests from the library today, and we'll see how this one goes. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Okay. Hello, I'm back. Hello, I'm back. I'm trying to figure out ways on how to improve my camera and lighting work. I don't know. It feels so long since I've learned anything. I'm happy to report that I, of course, finished Monstress by Marjorie Liu, and the artist's name is Sana Takeda, and I loved it. I'm honestly like a little bit mad at myself that I bought this years ago. I don't know where my copy is still, but I bought it years ago, and I thought I read at least the first one. I guess I just didn't pay enough attention to it. I was in college at the time when I bought it, so maybe I was was just busy or dealing with other things. No, but I loved it. The story is set in this like Art Deco steampunk world in which the world is divided into multiple races. So we have humans and we have arcanics and we also have the ancients. And in the middle of all of this is a woman named Micah who is an arcanic, but she looks human and is harboring deep secrets and a past that she does not remember. It's honestly like such a huge world. I highly recommend just reading it, but it deals with racism, deals with slavery, deals with religious zealotry and executions in the name of religion and the abuse of power by religious organizations. There are so many pieces to this grand puzzle that book one just kind of really just cracks the surface on. So I'm very happy that I do have volumes 2 and 3 on hand, so I can continue reading this when it's time. Honestly, also speaking for graphic novels, the art style is absolutely gorgeous, very soft but also highly detailed, which is just exactly what I like. And so yeah, if you ever find yourself in the mood for high fantasy steampunk with exceptional artwork, I highly recommend this. So I decided to make the executive decision. My copy is in the other room, I don't feel like getting it, but I made the executive decision to eschew the order that I gave myself, the reading order that I gave myself, and started reading Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse ahead of Wildwood, which was supposed to be the next one. Because it's the shorter one on the list, and Wildwood and the now last one, Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi, are a little longer. I just kind of want to get something done because we are approaching the end of the year really quick. And there are a couple of more, I guess, attempts at reading other books that I want to make, and I kind of just want to be done with this vlog, honestly, and move on to other ideas. I know I did just make like the Gladiator 2, but I don't want like 2 videos or 3 videos to be in between like this vlog that was supposed to be one part. To talk so far of what I've read of Tread of Angels, I feel really bad because it's like a 200-page novella. I'm about 70-ish, 80-ish pages, and I kind of want to DNF. And I feel really bad because this is Rebecca Roanhorse, and I did really enjoy the Sixth World series, the first 2 books of that. Those are the only other works that I've read of hers. I don't know where Tread of Angels falls, if this is an early work or something. I don't remember. I won it in a giveaway, but I don't remember if it was like, you know, the pre-release kind of giveaway thing. It's not an ARC. The thing is, and I think I've talked about this before, like, it's not quite a trope, but it's like a bad writing habit that I see a lot, is when a main character's like established motivation involves someone that we don't see for pages and pages and pages. Usually it's a sibling. Like most of the time it's a sibling. I talked about this in my To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods video, where that main character's motivation in Ru Ying is to take care of her sister Meiya, but we don't see Meiya for like 6 or 7 chapters. The motivation just rings very hollow, and that's pretty much the exact same problem that I have with this book. And it's so short because it's a novella, and yet the premise is so huge because it's set in this world in which fallen angels have propagated the earth and humans have subjugated them to work for them in mines for precious material called divinity that only fallen can detect. What is that sound? I hope you don't catch it. There's a sound going on over there. Anyway, it's a giant allegory for the contradictions of like racism and slavery and subjugation and religious, and basically it's kind of like monstrous when I think about it out loud, but it's very much taken from, I guess you can say, like the Christian Catholic canonization of angels and stuff like that. The main plot premise is that there's this young woman named Celeste, and she is half fallen. And she has a sister named Marielle, and she looks more fallen than her. White passing versus not. So Celeste is human passing, but her sister is not. However, her sister is accused of murdering a man of higher power called a virtue. So Celeste, driven by, of course, fierce protection of her sister, goes to try to prove her innocence. So that is like the main grounded plot, but there's like, of course, some other stuff going on. There's a demon ex-boyfriend involved. But my problem with it so far is that I only just met Marielle, and she is the main motivator for the main character, and yet she doesn't show up for 70-ish pages. And I'm a little bit like, oh my god, this again? I've had this problem with other books before. I think, what was it? I think Ember in the Ashes also had that problem for me as well, almost, but I was won over by that book by the other characters eventually. But no, this has become, I don't want to say cheap, but it's become a very cheap and easy, and I hate to say, I don't know if authors are seeing this, that like, hey, look, it's great that this main character has a family, a sibling that they want to take care of, but like, it doesn't mean anything to me, the reader, unless I see that sibling, that family member, that friend. Because for example, it means something different when, let's say, the main character loves her sister, but turns out her sister's a piece of shit and the main character doesn't see it. That says something more about the main character's perception versus when, let's just say, the main character loves her sister and her sister's a good person. Then the audience will be driven by affection for both of these characters rather than feeling some sort of pity or protection over. See, like, sure, the motivation itself is great, but then like expanding on that motivation, diving deeper into that motivation. If her sister's a piece of shit, then why is her sister a piece of shit? Why is the main character still protecting her? I'm thinking about Feyre from Court of Thorns and Roses, specifically the first book. But yeah, and if the sibling that they want to protect is a good person, then why? If the sibling wants to be involved in the rebellion, then why? Why does, you know, like, why is this? You know, so here's the thing. Of course it's like, oh, it's only 200 pages, the book, so maybe I should just finish it. But it's like, look, we're coming up to the end of the year. I want to get a lot of stuff done, not just with these books, but also with my personal life. We'll see. Again, it's short. I could probably finish it in an afternoon if I really crack down on it. We'll see. I hope to be done with this vlog soon, because I've been decluttering a whole lot. This has been the longest project. I don't even know if it's worth it, but we'll see. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Hello, welcome back. It's been a really long time since I last updated, and I finally finished the last bunch of books for this reading vlog. It's been, oh my god. I don't even want to know how long this has taken. I was just so busy last week, and then I started overthinking about lighting and daylight, and I'm like, oh, I can't film if it's not daylight, but now I've procrastinated again, and I just wanted to do this today and hopefully get this done before the holidays start. I'll talk about it a little later. I have another project that came up all of a sudden and has derailed my plan, so I wanted to get this done now to talk about my last 3 books. So just jumping right into it, I did finish, even though I did think about DNFing it despite it being so short, I did finish Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse. So this one, I don't even remember what I ended up giving it. I think it was like a 2-star. I do remember talking about it in the previous update that I did not like how the main character Celeste's motivation was to save her sister, but we do not see her sister for quite a long time in this book. To talk about the rest of the story, well, should I spoil it? Okay, I'm gonna spoil it. If you're interested in reading, I'll just let you know that I'm spoiling it. So Celeste is assigned to basically be her sister's advocate, and instead of like a typical jury system, it's basically like, well, if you advocate hard enough, then God will hear you, and then he'll decide if your sister is innocent or not. Or if you're able to find evidence that someone else did it, then we'll let your sister go. So of course Celeste is like, okay, let me investigate because like my sister is so whatever. I don't remember what she said, but she's like, no way would she ever kill somebody. So Celeste in her investigations basically finds out that Marielle did in fact do it because it was something about Marielle having like an affair with a virtue man who turns out to have been like a serial cheater, and she's pregnant with his kid, but that man was like, no way, bye, and then of course Marielle killed him. Yeah, basically that. I don't have time to go into all the details about how she found that out. So Celeste was like, aw shit, okay, I'm gonna pin the death on this other girl instead. Everyone else in her circle is like, Celeste, don't do that. And like even her demonic ex-boyfriend is like, yeah, you sure you want to do that? It's like, yeah, like make a deal with me to make sure this happens. However, what ends up happening is that Marielle, realizing that this other girl is about to take the fall for her, she's like, no, I did it. Yeah, it was all me. But I'm pregnant. And the guy's widow, who Celeste did meet earlier, she's like, yeah, okay, like I'll help take care of my husband's child. And I promise I will reform this half-fallen woman so she'll be good to society. And everyone's like, okay. And that's how it ends. Yeah, and I was like, great, I kind of don't really care. This book is so short, and also I didn't really like Celeste. And I think that was the point, that Celeste is so unlikable. But I think maybe with a full-length novel, this idea could have been explored better, this like world of like fallen and virtues and like this religious theocratic establishment, metaphors for marginalized people. Also this demon ex-boyfriend who's even horrified about what this girl is doing to pin the murder on this other girl. And in the end, Celeste is like, you can have me. And even the demon is like, actually no, I'm gonna get out of here. It's kind of funny. But in the end, I'm like, well, it had really nice ideas, but not really well explored. Like, yeah, sure, if Celeste is meant to be an unlikable character, then I would have understood it. But instead, I'm just like, I don't really care. Because, like, she does, I guess, get her comeuppance in a way when her demon boyfriend rejects her, but I don't know. Maybe there could have been a deeper exploration for that. Like, I think I forgot if it was in the blurb, but like, talking about her backstory and how like Celeste is taken by her virtue father to be raised because she looks white passing, basically. Talk about more about her guilt, like why her actions are fueled by her guilt for something she didn't control. Anyway, I could go on and on and on about this, but ultimately it was like, what? This idea was too big to be like squeezed into such short time. So then I got into Wildwood by Colin Meloy with illustrations by Carson Ellis. This is a pretty big chonker. I ended up DNFing it. I made it about, let's see, how far did I make it? I don't even remember, excuse me. So I did make it at least, let's say like 70, 80-ish pages in. I did really enjoy what I read because this is set in Portland, so it was giving like Pacific Northwest, like supernatural vibes. I kept thinking about Night in the Woods, that video game. That video game isn't supernatural and it's actually a little bit more adult toned, but like gave me those vibes. But this is a middle grade, and this girl named Prue, one day out of the blue on an ordinary day, her baby brother Mac is taken from his carriage, picked up by ravens or crows, and taken to the impassable wilderness, which is this like dense forest that is bordering her hometown. And every adult is like, no, don't go into the impassable wilderness. It's just always been there. Like, just don't go. So she's like, okay. But then she's like, no, my brother's been taken there and I can't leave him there. So she goes on a quest. Her classmate named Curtis joins her and she's like, no, I have to do this on my own. But Curtis is like, well, I want to go into the impassable wilderness. And like, they end up going together. At some point they end up separated, and Curtis ends up with this group of coyotes who are acting like little soldiers, and they serve this woman called the Dowager Governess. And it was around here, like in the 80-page mark, when Curtis gets more and more like won over by the Dowager Governess, giving very much like Edmund and the White Witch from Narnia vibes. Like, that movie's one of my favorite movies, so of course I was thinking about it as this is happening. And then at the same time, Prue is picked up by, it's like very like absurdist fantasy, so she's picked up by a mail truck in the middle of this forest that leads to this town where like a bunch of talking animals live, and they're like, yeah, the Dowager Governess wants to take over the wood. And I'm like, okay, so she's basically the White Witch, and she's like feeding Curtis all these goodies and like trying to win him over. So it was at this point I'm like, okay, this is nice, but I wasn't really feeling it, because I guess, look, here's to say, like, my reason for DNFing it is not because this is a bad book or badly written. I just think it's not meant for me, like, just like not really that spark there. Probably because I kept comparing it so much to Narnia, and I'm like, well, I can already guess what's gonna happen, so I want to read something else. So, but like, that's not to say it's badly written, and of course, like, what inspirations you get from it, like other works, it's gonna show up in your work. Nothing is original anymore, and that's fine. If there were like maybe more age-appropriate reader, definitely, who would love this, and especially I do really enjoy the illustrations. Very, very sweet. I'm not gonna rate Wildwood because I didn't finish it. It's just not for me. I think it's just been on my TBR for so long. Oh yeah, wait. Yeah, ages 9 and up. I'm 25. I think it's fine. So if there's like a younger reader in your life who really wants to sink their teeth into something, then I think this could be a good fit for them if they like fantasy as well. So finally, speaking of comparing things, the last book that I did finish, and the last book overall, is Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. So speaking of comparing things, I did not realize that this is basically a Six of Crows dupe. And I mean that in like just the most neutral way possible. Now, again, not to say that taking elements of your inspirations into your own work is bad. However, I was low-key struggling to get through this because I kept thinking about Six of Crows. So to just basically get the story down, is that Gilded Wolves is set in this universe where magic exists, and it's called forging. And forging is apparently powered by these magical artifacts called Babel fragments, which are allegedly fragments from the biblical Tower of Babel. Babel? I actually don't know how to pronounce it. Tower of Babel. Anyway, I'm just gonna say Babel, and you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. So in the Bible, humans tried to build the Tower of Babel to reach heaven, but God was like, don't do that actually. And he destroyed the tower and in order to prevent humans from rebuilding the tower, he made them speak different languages. So this is like the biblical explanation as to why different languages exist, so that we don't come together to try and build a tower to reach God. But in this universe, those fragments of the tower became imbued with God's power and thus spread the art of forging, which is like this godly magic, to certain individuals. And this takes place in late 19th century Paris. So I think they said the year is like 1889. This was at the Universal Exposition where the Eiffel Tower was built. So just to give you an image of what it looks like. The story follows 6 main characters. Starts with 5, then grows into 6, and then goes back to 5 again. But I will try not to spoil it. If I feel like I am, then I will let you know. We follow this guy named Severin, and I think he's 17, And he is the owner of this exclusive hotel, but he also runs a heist team. His team includes Enrique, who is this Filipino-Spanish historian, very Robert Langdon-esque kind of guy, and Lila, who is this Indian Persian? Okay. And there's Lila, who's an Indian girl, and she is like this dancer femme fatale who's also a baker, so that's really sweet. So like her alter ego is Le Enigma, who's like this exclusive dancer, and so she uses that persona to get into places, to get info, and she also works in the hotel as a baker as like her other persona. And then there's Tristan, who's this forger who can manipulate plants. And then there's Zofia, who is a Jewish Polish girl, and her forging ability is with metals and materials, so she's like the gadget maker. And so the plot kicks off when they steal this compass that holds a map to what they think is a Babel fragment. It's really a piece of something that leads to the Babel fragment eventually. But basically they're like, oh my god, we can get the Babel fragment because Severin is the like spurned heir of a house. So roll back a little bit on the world building. The Babel fragments are protected by the Order of Babel. I think it's like this nationwide order, and they're separated into various houses based on like its location. So Paris has 4 houses. There's House Corey, there's House Nix, there's House Vanth, and there's the Fallen House. Ooh. The Fallen House was like destroyed when allegedly they tried to use the Babel fragment to fuse with all of the other Babel fragments to achieve like godhood or something. So they were like, don't do that, and they were struck down, and no one ever speaks their name. So Severin was the son of the head of House Vanth, and he is half Algerian. I guess that essentially made him a bastard, but he was like the only kid left, and he knew his mother, and he wasn't even allowed to call his mom mother. Like he only would address her by her first name, but she was like, I'm your mom, And so he was like, okay. And essentially was raised with lots of like love and care. Like the other houses, you know, treated them as their own until his parents died in a house fire. And he thinks his inheritance test was falsified so that he and this other boy named Hypnos both wouldn't become patriarchs. They wouldn't become house patriarchs because Hypnos is also a bastard son of House Nyx. He is like born from a Haitian slave woman. This is very sad, but it's colonialism. So these like other house guys are like, we can't have two people of color be our house leaders. So Severin, bye-bye, go away. And he is raised in a series of foster houses and he names them after, I think they're nicknames. I don't think their names were really like the 7 deadly sins, but he like in his chapters, he recounts like when my father was wrath, he taught me this. And then when my father was greed, he taught me this. And Tristan comes up, I think, in the first house, and then he becomes very close with him. And so they're like they're like basically brothers through like trauma bonding, I guess. I actually really like the relationship between Severin and Tristan because it was like, they've known each other the longest. They've been through the most hardship together. I don't even remember where I was going with this. Oh, right. So back to the plot. So they're like, okay, great. We can get the Babel fragment and like basically force the houses with this as like collateral to reinstate me as like the house patriarch of House Vanth, my birthright. And everyone's like, sure, but like, are you sure? And even Tristan is like, I don't want you to do this. Like, can't we just be happy where we are? And low key, yeah, I'm a little bit like, yeah, why can't you just be happy where you are? But I guess like, because he's so traumatized by like all these like abusive foster fathers that he's grown up with, is like, no, I deserve this. So he hatches a plan. But then the person he stole it from was Hypnos, who the childhood friend he grew up with, who did get to attain house head status and not him. But Hypnos like is like, you stole from me, but I want to work with you. So I don't remember exactly. Oh yeah, it was like some sort of like message from his late father. Anyway, I don't remember. But basically he's like, I want to work with you, and like, you know, it sucks that you didn't get your birthright, so I'm gonna help you. So you can see where I'm at with like, oh, like all of these comparisons to Six of Crows. And of course I'm not the only one. Like tons of people in like the Goodreads reviews did mention that like, hey, this is very similar to Six of Crows. Like there's the broody like leader guy who is like striving for revenge. There's like the Indian girl with like, who's like a dancer. And you could argue for like various bits and pieces, like Enrique could be like Jesper in terms of personality, and Zofia could be like Wylan in terms of like their tinkering, and Nina, well, you know, Hypnos could be like a Nina. He's like the very like flamboyant, queer, like flashy character that Nina can be sometimes. There were points of the story that I was genuinely invested in. Like I like Zofia on her own as a character, not just comparing her to Wylan, because she's very autistic coded, very much thinks in terms of like logic and math, and has trouble interacting with people, has very specific like things that she like wants to keep in a certain way. And the way her relationship is depicted with Enrique, who's like a little bit more sassy and like talks in metaphors, or Lila, who dabbles with like, you know, fashion and makeup and perfume and things Sophia isn't really used to, but they interact with each other. They get more used to each other, and those parts were really sweet. And as I said earlier, like I did really enjoy the relationship between Severin and Tristan. And of course, perhaps another comparison to Six of Crows is that Severin and Lila have a thing going, and in this book it's told that they did have a one night stand a while ago, but they're like, oh my god, but we have other things to deal with. Like I can't deal with these feelings on top of whatever else I have to deal with. And Lila's backstory, I won't spoil it because it is super duper interesting. So because of that, I actually am interested in reading the rest of this series at some point. We'll see how it goes. And also like, okay, I'm not gonna spoil it, but there was one decision at the very end that I was just okay, so spoilers. They do complete their heist, but somehow, as like this last minute convolution of the plot, the bad guy, or not the ultimate bad guy, but like the bad guy of the week in this book, breaks out of prison and shows up to where the wolves are. I guess they're the wolves, or where the team is at this party. And I think it was a crossbow. He shoots a crossbow at them. Severin jumps in front of Lila, but it's Tristan who takes the shot and dies. And I was like, oh no. Oh my god, I was so upset when that happened, and I was like, oh my god, it's all because Severin wasn't keeping his promise to protect Tristan. He like meddled with the order against Tristan's wishes, and now he's here, and then this is like the guilt that feeds into him for the next book. But then like thinking back, I'm like, I'm just so upset, genuinely so upset that Tristan is dead. Like, is it even, because it was so, I find it to be like so convoluted at the end that like the bad guy gets out off screen just to do this one final act, because I don't know if it's gonna come up later, like maybe there's some like magic shenanigans that brings him back to life, or maybe he's not really, I don't even know. But it was said at some point that, okay, so the way that they do house inheritance tests is that they use this magic ring to basically cut into their hand, and if it flashes blue, that means they are the heir. So it leaves a scar on the hand. So Tristan has a scar on the hand. So I was like, oh, is he also some like discarded house heir? But then now he's dead. I'm like, well, there goes that mystery. Unless he comes back. I don't know. This is a trilogy after all. So just that like one grievance that I was still like very disappointed by. Okay, and then I guess spoilers done. In terms of like, despite liking parts of the characters and parts of the plot, there were some like really convoluted stuff going on at some point, and then like things happen off screen that are like, oh yeah, so I got the thing that we need off screen, and I'm like, okay, there's just like so many pieces going on that I think it was just hard to juggle all of them. And then I'm a little bit like, okay, like my suspension of disbelief is up to here. I just want to know what happens next. And despite my misgivings with the ending, I do have interest in reading the rest of the series. So with that, that is finally the end of my Read for Your Life reading vlog. I only, out of all 10 books, I think I only kept one. I think I only kept Monstress, which I did find my copy of, by the way. Very nice. Very cool of me. Very mindful, very demure of me. And again, I do have the rest of the series here. So I guess you can say this vlog was successful, question mark. My goal was to declutter. And so, yeah, once I find a place, find a home for all the rest of these books, then I've successfully decluttered 9 books. Hooray. Okay, with that in mind, my next I'll leave you with this because I don't know when I'm gonna be done with it. It's one of those things where I hope to be done with it very soon. My next video is going to be bonkers. I will not be kissing the friend who recommended this to me, but rest of you, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you want to see my next project. And with that in mind, kiss your fan and friends goodnight. Not this one. And I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye-bye.